The snow blower screamed like it was trying to warn me. For one frozen heartbeat, I thought the machine had finally given up, metal tearing itself apart, auger biting into ice wrong, something catastrophic. Then I saw her, Mrs. Linda Calder, HOA president, clipboard dictator, standing behind my snow blower with both gloved hands clamped around the handles, her heels slipping on packed ice as the machine lurched forward on its own power. "Turn it OFF," she screamed. The blower surged, dragged her a full 3 feet down my driveway, and threw a rooster tail of snow into the air like a flare gun. I ran, slid, slammed into the side panel, and smashed the kill switch with my palm. The engine died instantly, leaving behind a ringing silence, so loud it felt like pressure in my skull. Mrs. Calder lay half buried in snow, gasping, mascara smeared, dignity scattered across my driveway like broken glass. And just like that, the line was crossed. An hour earlier, nothing had been wrong. The morning had been ordinary in the way winter mornings always were in Cedar Ridge. Gray sky, heavy snowfall, the kind of quiet that only comes when sound gets swallowed by snow. I'd woken up early, made coffee that tasted like cardboard, and stared out the kitchen window wondering if the district would cancel school. They hadn't. Of course they hadn't. So I dragged my snow blower out of the garage. Old thing, loud, temperamental, but it worked. It always worked. Ever since my wife left and took the all-wheel drive SUV, that machine was the only reason I could still get to work when storms hit. I was halfway through clearing the driveway when I heard the crunch of boots behind me. "Excuse me." I knew that voice. Everyone in Cedar Ridge knew that voice. I shut the blower down and turned around. Mrs. Calder stood there in a pristine white parka, clipboard tucked in her arm like a badge of office. Her lips were pressed into that familiar tight smile, the one she used when she'd already decided the outcome of the conversation. "You can't use that," she said. I blinked. "Use what?" She tapped the clipboard. "That machine. It violates HOA guidelines." I looked at the snow piled halfway up my mailbox. "It's a snow blower. It's snowing." "The HOA provides snow removal services," she replied smoothly. I laughed before I could stop myself. "The HOA plow hasn't come through in 2 days." Her smile didn't move. "That's not the issue. Section 8.4, unauthorized machinery. Gas-powered equipment requires board approval. It's my driveway. It's a community-facing driveway." I could feel the first flicker of irritation spark in my chest. "Linda, I'm a teacher. I need to get to work." She stepped closer. "Then perhaps you should plan ahead." That was when I knew this wasn't about rules. It was about power. "I'm finishing my driveway," I said. "You're welcome to file whatever complaint you want." For a second, I thought she might back down. Instead, she stepped past me. "I'll be confiscating this," she said, reaching for the handles. "Don't," I warned. She pulled the starter cord. Anyone who's ever used a snowblower knows what happens when you don't brace for the kick. The engine caught instantly. The auger bit. The machine lunged forward like a startled animal. Mrs. Calder shrieked as her boots lost traction. The rest happened fast. Too fast for thought, too slow to undo. Now she lay in the snow, shaking, staring up at me like I'd pushed her myself. "You assaulted me," she hissed. I stared back, heart hammering. "You grabbed my equipment." "This will be reported," she said, scrambling to her feet with my help only because she had no choice. "Expect consequences." She marched away without another word. I stood there for a long time after, snow settling quietly over the tracks the blower had carved. Something in my gut told me the incident wasn't over, that it had barely begun. By noon, that feeling proved right. My phone buzzed nonstop while I taught third period. Emails from the HOA, formal notices, citations, fines, language so stiff it barely felt human, violation of community equipment policy, endangerment of board member, temporary seizure of non-compliant property, temporary seizure. When I got home that evening, a bright red sticker was slapped across my garage door like a wound. Notice of HOA authority, property under review. I peeled it off slowly, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with something colder. Across the street, Mrs. Patel watched from behind her curtains. Down the block, Hank pretended to shovel while clearly listening. Nobody said anything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the wind scrape branches against the siding. Replaying the moment, Mrs. Calder pulled the starter cord. The look in her eyes hadn't been anger. It had been certainty. She believed she could take whatever she wanted. And that was the most dangerous thing of all. Outside, snow kept falling, quiet and relentless, burying everything under a clean white surface. But underneath, something ugly had started to move. By morning, the red sticker on my garage felt less like a warning and more like a claim. I peeled it off slowly, the adhesive stretching and tearing, leaving behind a faint outline that wouldn't come clean no matter how hard I scrubbed. It was petty, but it was deliberate. A mark. Something meant to remind me who was in charge. I didn't call Mrs. Calder. I didn't argue with the HOA. I did what I always told my students to do when power stopped making sense. Follow the paper. Cedar Ridge's HOA bylaws were posted online in a neat PDF, wrapped in legal language designed to exhaust anyone who tried to read it. I printed the whole thing and spread it across my dining table like a crime scene. Coffee rings stained the margins as I worked my way through it line by line. Section 8.4. Unauthorized machinery. The wording was vague enough to swallow anything with an engine. Snow blowers, generators, pressure washers, even lawn mowers, if the board felt ambitious. But what caught my eye were the amendments. 6 revisions in 3 years. Every single one passed between November and February. I pulled the meeting minutes next. Same pattern, same justification every time. Community safety during extreme weather events. No resident objections recorded. No votes listed by name. That wasn't oversight. That was design. By late morning, I needed voices to go with the ink. Mrs. Patel answered her door like she was expecting bad news. Her eyes flicked past me to the garage, then back to my face. "They're coming for yours, aren't they?" she asked. "They already tried." I said, "Has this happened to you?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Last winter. Power went out for 3 days. I had a generator. They said it was a fire hazard." "What happened to it?" "They took it. Said it would be returned after inspection." Her mouth tightened. "I saw it later behind the clubhouse. Running lights for a board dinner." "Did you get it back?" "Yes," she said quietly. "I paid a usage fee." Across the street, Hank didn't bother lowering his voice. "They took my pressure washer," he said, leaning on his shovel. Cited noise complaints that never existed. 2 weeks later, I see it mounted on an HOA trailer. "You fought it." "Yeah," he said. "Lost. Same people writing the rules decide the appeals." By the time I got home, my notes were thick with names and dates. Stories stacked neatly on top of each other, all pointing in the same direction. This wasn't about safety. It was about revenue. That afternoon, I searched public business records. It took less than 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. Calder Maintenance, LLC, registered 18 months earlier. Address, Mrs. Calder's home. Listed services, community equipment management and leasing. 2 HOA board members were listed as consultants. I leaned back in my chair and let the anger settle into something colder, something steadier. They weren't just confiscating equipment. They were laundering it, moving private property into a shell company and renting it back to the same residents it had been taken from. It was quiet, clean, almost elegant, and completely illegal. I needed proof they couldn't explain away, so I offered them exactly what they wanted. I sent a formal email to the board that night. "I'm willing to make my snow blower available for temporary community use, provided there's a written agreement outlining liability and return conditions." The response came faster than it should have. "The board appreciates your cooperation in maintaining community standards." No agreement attached. No questions asked. That sealed it. I installed a GPS tracker under the housing of the snowblower and marked the fuel cap with UV dye I use for student lab demonstrations. I charged my cameras and waited. 2 nights later, the tracker moved, I followed it on my phone through falling snow, keeping my distance as the signal settled at the clubhouse. From across the street, I watched an HOA truck idle, while two men loaded my snow blower into the bed. A magnetic logo had been slapped onto the door. Calder Maintenance. I filmed everything. The truck, the plates, the way no one bothered to hide. They didn't think they needed to. The next day, the pressure started. My trash bin was gone. My mailbox had been opened. A certified letter arrived warning a potential foreclosure for ongoing noncompliance. That night, my doorbell camera caught a man in a hoodie testing my garage handle. They weren't subtle anymore. I backed everything up, cloud storage, hard drives, a USB I left at my classroom desk. If something happened to me, the trail wouldn't disappear. Standing in my kitchen, watching snow pile up again, I realized something that sent a chill deeper than the weather ever could. Mrs. Calder hadn't panicked when the snow blower dragged her. She'd panicked when she lost control of it. And people who build systems like hers don't stop when they're challenged. They escalate. The Winter Assembly was standing room only. That alone told me everything. Cedar Ridge residents didn't usually show up for HOA meetings unless there was free food or a new fine involved. But that night, the clubhouse buzzed with something sharper. Anger, curiosity, the quiet hope that maybe, finally, someone would say the thing everyone had been thinking. Snow hammered the windows as if it wanted in. Mrs. Calder stood at the front of the room, perfectly composed in a navy blazer, her posture straight, her smile practiced. The board sat behind her in a neat row, faces stiff, eyes darting whenever someone whispered too loudly. I took a seat in the back, laptop bag at my feet, phone fully charged. Every muscle in my body felt calm in a way that only comes after a decision has already been made. Mrs. Calder tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she said warmly. "Tonight is about restoring harmony and trust within our community." A few people scoffed. Someone laughed outright. She pressed on. Recent misunderstandings have created unnecessary tension. The board would like to clarify our authority, and that's enough. My voice cut through the room before I realized I'd stood up, heads turned. Mrs. Calder froze for half a second too long. "Before we talk about harmony," I said, stepping into the aisle, "we should talk about theft." The word landed hard. Mrs. Calder's smile tightened. "This is not the appropriate forum." "It's exactly the forum," I replied, "because you did this in public. To all of us." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Phones came out. Someone whispered my name. I walked to the front, heart steady, and plugged my laptop into projector meant for budget slides. The first image filled the screen. My snow blower, clearly mine, loaded into the back of an HOA truck. Gasps. Mrs. Calder stepped forward. "That image proves nothing. The equipment was voluntarily surrendered for community." I clicked to the next slide. GPS data, timestamps, location pings. "This shows where my property went after you seized it," I said. "Straight to the clubhouse. Then to a private storage unit registered to Calder Maintenance, LLC. The room went silent. One of the board members shifted in his chair. I didn't slow down. Next slide, public business records. Calder Maintenance is a private company. I continued, voice even, owned by Mrs. Calder, with 2 board members listed as consultants. Its primary business? Equipment leasing. Someone in the crowd stood up. "You mean our stuff?" "Yes," I said. "Your generators, your pressure washers, your snow blowers." Mrs. Calder's voice cracked for the first time. "This is harassment. You're twisting." I hit play. Video footage filled the screen. Mrs. Calder on my driveway, her hand yanking the starter cord, the snow blower lunging, her scream as it dragged her forward. The room erupted. Shouts, laughter, anger. She tried to steal it. "That's my generator. Call the cops." Mrs. Calder spun toward the board. "Turn that off." I raised my hand. The video froze on her face, eyes wide, control already slipping. "You accuse me of endangerment," I said quietly, "but you were the one who grabbed equipment you didn't own, without permission. without authority. She lunged for the laptop. Security. 2 off-duty cops hired for crowd control. Stepped between us. This meeting is adjourned, Mrs. Calder shouted. Everyone needs to leave now. No, someone yelled. We're not leaving. Another voice. Where's our money? The board members started talking all at once. One stood up, handshaking. I didn't know it was illegal, he said. I thought. Mrs. Calder rounded on him. Sit down. That's when the front doors opened again. 2 uniformed police officers walked in, snow clinging to their shoulders. Which one of you called? One asked. Half the room pointed at Mrs. Calder. I handed over a flash drive. Everything's on there. I said, video, records, GPS data. An officer glanced through it, then looked up. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us. Mrs. Calder laughed, high and sharp. This is ridiculous. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? She turned to me, stepping close enough that I could smell her perfume. You think this ends here? She whispered. You think I built this alone? Her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were scared. The officers took her arms. She didn't resist, but she didn't stop talking either. Accusations spilling out, names dropping, threats unraveling into noise. As they led her away, one of the board members broke down crying. Another slipped out a side door. The room buzzed with adrenaline and disbelief. People surrounded me. Questions, thanks, anger spilling over after years of silence. Outside, snow kept falling, thick and relentless. As a police car pulled away, Mrs. Calder twisted in the back seat and looked straight at me through the glass. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear the words. But I didn't need to. This wasn't just exposure. It was ignition. And whatever she'd been part of, whatever system she'd fed, it wasn't done burning yet. The snow stopped the morning after Mrs. Calder was arrested. It wasn't dramatic. No sunrise breaking through clouds. No symbolic light cutting across Cedar Ridge. Just a quiet, exhausted stillness, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath after finally saying something it had rehearsed for years. By noon, city trucks rolled in. Not the HOA plow. Real ones. County logos. Salt spreaders. Men in reflective jackets who didn't carry clipboards or smirks. They cleared the streets fast, efficient, like they'd been waiting for permission. Word traveled quicker than the plows. Mrs. Calder had been charged. Misappropriation of property. Fraud. Conflict of interest. The board was under investigation. Calder Maintenance, LLC, had been frozen pending audit. For the first time since I'd moved to Cedar Ridge, the HOA website went dark. No fines. No notices. No community reminders. Just silence. People came out of their houses like survivors after a storm. Neighbors who'd barely nodded before now stood in driveways talking, really talking, comparing stories, realizing how long they'd all been living under the same pressure without knowing its shape. Hank showed up at my door with a 6-pack. Figured you earned this, he said. Mrs. Patel followed later with homemade bread, still warm. She didn't say much, just pressed it into my hands and nodded, her eyes wet. A handwritten sign appeared at the end of my driveway that afternoon. Thank you. Someone had drawn a little snow blower next to it. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt tired. The adrenaline drained fast, leaving behind something heavier. Exposure didn't undo the years of small humiliations, the quiet fear of fines and warnings, the way people had learned to stay silent just to survive. At school, my students had already heard. Is it true? One of them asked. You took down the HOA? I shook my head. I didn't take down anything. I just paid attention. They laughed, but I meant it. Power like that doesn't disappear. It relocates. The city appointed a temporary administrator. The HOA board dissolved. A town hall meeting replaced the Winter Assembly, this time with city officials, lawyers, and a packed room of residents who weren't whispering anymore. Restitution was discussed. Equipment returns. Fee refunds. Some people cried. Some shouted. Some just listened. Closure doesn't always look like peace. Sometimes it looks like permission to finally be angry. A week later, I went to the impound lot and brought my snowblower home. It looked smaller somehow. Quieter. Just a machine again. I rolled it into the garage and shut the door, scraping the last of the red sticker residue from paint. It still left a faint outline. Some marks don't come off. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without waking up to every sound. The next morning, my phone buzzed while I was making coffee. Unknown number. No area code. Just a text. You did the right thing. But you only exposed a local chapter. I stared at the screen. Another message followed. HOAs don't operate in isolation. Neither do the companies behind them. My chest tightened, not with fear, but recognition. Mrs. Calder hadn't been improvising. She'd been following a template. I typed back once. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who learned the hard way that bylaws can be weaponized. I didn't respond again. Later that day, I drove past the clubhouse. The doors were locked. The HOA flag had been taken down. In its place, a plain city notice flapped in the wind. Temporary. Under review. I thought of Mrs. Calder's words as they led her away. You think I built this alone? That night, I stood in my garage, hands resting on the snowblower's handles. Outside, spring was starting to push through the thaw. Soon, I wouldn't need it for months. But winter always comes back. And systems like hers? They don't vanish. They adapt. They wait for the next storm, the next emergency, the next moment when people are tired and willing to trade control for convenience. I turned off the light and closed the door. Somewhere out there, another board meeting was being planned. Another rule was being rewritten. Another machine was being claimed as community property. And now I knew what to listen for. Not the noise. The quiet right before it starts again.